We wanted to term that, and then things went back to status quo. And so I looked at history and said, the Browning America is going to bring a white lash that we haven't seen before. And so I wrote for what happens after that, for the brilliance after that, for the community that comes after that.
Now talk to me a little bit about writing this as an African American father. I'm a father of 3 boys. All 3 of my boys went through pretty significant incidences of racism. One of which I talked about on these airwaves,
yes,
one
sir.
of which was very public, another one involved my local community. Again, all 3 things that as African American men, these end up being parts of life, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So you had to write a balance, right? You had to both write from hope, and it's ironic you used the phrase as far as being the flower growing from the sidewalk. Somebody described me as that in my own book.
Oh, my man.
So dig it. I like this energy. But you had to write from that perspective while also showing people, I am frustrated.
Yeah.
This is intolerable. This has been going on too long. And there's a righteous indignation that I write from while also having optimism and hope and a path forward.
Yeah.
How did you balance that in the book?
To be honest with you, I stopped trying to hold a balance and just hold attention. Because I realized that, and I'm Afro-Cuban, by the way, not African-American, and that matters to this context.
And you bring that up a lot,
yes.
And I apologize for that.
No.
But tell me about the difference in particular, because you mentioned that often, and there is a difference when you're lumped in when you shouldn't be versus standing on where you belong and representing the community that you choose to represent and why.
Yes, so to answer your first question, very simply, as my friend Wendell from Seattle says, anytime a black man speaks honestly about his experience, it feels like betrayal. Like you're committing a betrayal. And so I'll just say that to that, and then we can pick up on it later. But being Afro-Latino is...
No, you can't hold on. You can't lay that out there right there. So let's talk about the betrayal, because part of the betrayal, initially when I hear that phrase, and I'm talking to Michael Thornhill of his book, The First, the Few, and the Only, I have to imagine that part of that betrayal is, I'm trying to do things the right way. I know that people want status quo, but status quo is dysfunctional. Dysfunction has been here for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And I'm expected to just look at it, tolerate it, and pass it on to my children, and now I have a choice. Right. Either I betray the status quo by speaking up, or I betray my children by giving them this dysfunction. Either way, there seems to be betrayal, regardless of what you pick.
Well, let's just add this. If you betray your children, you'll keep a job, right? If you do the other, you'll lose your job. Isn't that the case?
In many instances, that is the case.
Right. We've seen that. I forget the lead scorer for the Chicago Bulls at the height of, I forget his name, but he stood up for what we're talking about, and he got abandoned by all those guys, and they even talked to him personally. I'll find out the name later. But at the end of the day, that betrayal is so multifaceted. He wasn't the lead scorer.
I know you're talking about Craig Hodges,
yes,
who was the leading three-point shooter for the Chicago Bulls.
And what happened to him?
Spoke out.
Mm-hmm. He
was on the first championship team. And wasn't there since.
And then he was he was a permanent bench warmer and still shot more threes in the 3-point shootout than anyone else.
Yes, he did.
And so that's what happens to you. You know why? Because when you're one of the first, the few, and the only, even on a team with all black people, you're still outnumbered because you're not one of the owners. The owners don't look like you. And whether you're in the classroom or the church, or that one black kid from youth group, or the one Asian kid from the bus, or the one Hispanic friend at work that you claim to love so much, there's an experience that you don't have to know, and that experience is this: you are not protected. Phyllis Wheatley, just like Craig Hodges, the first published poet and author in the United States of America. You know how her life ended? She spoke 5 languages and more or less kind of like rose out of slavery and was, quote unquote, awarded her freedom because she was so brilliant, because she did all this stuff. But you know how she died? In an unmarked grave with her children dead, sickly, with no one to care for her. What happens to people like Craig Hodges, what happens to people like Phyllis Wheatley, and what happens to people in this conversation is that you're unprotected. That's the reality. You can be bold and strong all you want, but you will do it by yourself. And look, I have learned by doing this work and doing this before I started writing about it that your skinfolk ain't kinfolk. That people will choose their job over you every time.
And it's interesting you bring that up because you were bringing up trailblazers.